Yeah, that's fine. No, it's this one. You see? Wait a second. This is what Chinese people do, man. Two different brands. Can you believe it? Look exactly the same. We're here in Manhattan, Chinatown at one of our biggest supermarkets, Hong Kong Supermarket, and we're going to show you how to build a basic Chinese pantry. Oftentimes, a lot of people who are introduced to Chinese and Asian cooking don't always know how to navigate specifically the sauce and condiment aisle. It's a complicated thing because, I mean, look at this place. There's so many different brands, there's so many mistranslations, there's so many different types of vinegars and soy sauces and oils and so on and so forth. This is my hope to give you a very quick overview guide to navigating a Chinese or Asian supermarket. First things first, heavy hitters, soy sauce. Soy sauce is a delightful, super colorful, wide, delicious, salty, umami, savory world. It's really quite complicated to navigate, but today, for beginners, we're going to focus on Chinese soy sauce, and specifically 3 categories to help you navigate this. The first is light, the second, dark soy sauce, the third, seasoning soy sauce. I think these 3 will be the foundation of most of your Chinese or Asian cooking. Okay, so first things first is light soy sauce. Light soy sauce is going to be your workhorse soy sauce. It's the soy sauce that we use for sodium. It basically is going to look something like this. If you want to take a look at the color, it's actually a little bit transparent. It's a little bit light, a little bit amber in color. This is going to be your saltiest soy sauce. This is where a lot of that flavor, that seasoning comes from. Oftentimes you might find some older recipes that just call for soy sauce without specifying what type of soy sauce. Best thing to do, assume that it is what we call in Cantonese cooking, light soy sauce. You can, after getting to know this bottle of soy sauce, look for reduced sodium options. I actually really enjoy reduced sodium soy sauce, not even explicitly for a health benefit, but reduced sodium soy sauce, often out of the bottle, is going to taste a little bit more balanced. You'll get a little bit more nuance in that soy flavor because the amount of salt has been reduced. You'll often find in most Asian supermarkets, reduced sodium soy sauce has something of a green label. Dark soy sauce, you will see is labeled dark soy sauce and has a deeper color. This deeper dark soy sauce color is a little bit maltier. It's a little bit more soy forward, I think, and a little bit less salty. But it is also more intense in color, and so therefore dark soy sauce is usually used to color foods. You won't use a lot of it, so 1 bottle will do in your pantry. Traditionally, dark soy sauce is made after light soy sauce is made. So after the fermentation process and all the salt is added, the light soy sauce is taken out of its fermentation barrel, and what's left is oftentimes processed one more time and it continues to ferment, which causes it to be a little bit thicker because some of the water is evaporated, but the soy flavor is also a little bit more intense. However, very much like olive oil, oftentimes the extra virgin, the first extract, will give you more of that soy flavor, which is why light soy sauce is often favored for flavor, whereas dark soy sauce is favored for color. The third category that is not as seen as often, but I think should be introduced to more cooking, is what is called seasoning, or sometimes seasoned soy sauce. This is soy sauce that started as a seasoning liquid, sometimes aminos, that is in a very specific shape you might recognize. Come over here. There they go. A lot of Southeast Asian chefs in particular, big fan of Maggi. Maggi has a very distinct flavor. It also is a little bit of a secret sauce that people add to things. Now, in the Chinese context, Maggi itself isn't as popular as what has become 味极鲜. So 味极鲜 is, literal translation, is flavor, superior, savory, or umami. Modern soy sauce making practices, to put it bluntly, the way to think of this is extra savory soy sauce, as in MSG is added. Now, there are different brands. The easiest way to recognize it is by the shape of the bottle, if you can't read the Chinese, because this one says delicate flavor. Some other things might say seasoning. Sometimes it says seasoned soy sauce. So the English is all over the place. But the shape of bottle will usually not lead you astray. It's an easy flavor enhancer in a similar way that you can use chicken powder, mushroom powder, or MSG. At the end of the aisle, we have vinegar. Vinegar, very, very briefly, it is a fermentation of something that is a little bit sweet that then becomes alcohol that eventually becomes vinegar. There are a couple of main types of vinegar that you'll see in a lot of Chinese and Asian cooking, those being rice vinegar, black vinegar, and the third one is what I would call sweet-ish vinegars. When people just ask for regular rice vinegar, what you're looking for is a clear rice vinegar like this. They are clear, they're yellow, and they are quite acidic. This is the type of vinegar you're often using if you want your sauce to be clear or you want high acidity in something like a dressing. The second type of vinegar, oftentimes the most confusing, is Zhenjiang-style black vinegar. The color from this vinegar comes from the dark rice that's being used. This is going to be a nice floral, fragrant flavor. So this is not going to be as sour as most of the clear rice vinegar that you find. After that, there are some slightly sweetened vinegars that are made more like sauces for specific dipping or cooking applications. There are two that comes to mind. One, the first one is something that's very dear to my heart from Hong Kong, from southern China, called Bachan Timchou. So timchou is a sweetened vinegar. Now this is a very sweet vinegar that has sugar added to it after the fermentation process, but it is delicious. It is so fragrant, it's so tasty. It's more like vinegar experts will say that, Lucas, this is not a vinegar, this is more like a sauce. We recently were able to get this. The reason why I'm so passionate about this type of vinegar is because I grew up right around the corner, and the original Bachan was next to my favorite street market in Hong Kong. Another one that I recently discovered upon my move to mainland China for the first time is this specific brand of Kang Le Cu. This is a very good out-of-the-bottle experience that is great for seafood and dipping dumplings like xiaolongbao, like soup dumplings. Oyster sauce, very important in Chinese cooking. Oyster sauce is how you get a well-rounded, full-bodied, balanced umami flavor. Obviously, it also gives you oyster flavor. The most common applications are therefore in seafood dishes, but also anything like a vegetable stir-fry that might need a little bit more oomph. Oyster sauce is a great option. When you taste it out of the bottle, it's going to be very well layered. It's a little bit salty, it's a little bit umami, and then it becomes sweet. It's the distilled essence of the best thing that the oyster has to offer. In short, the oyster sauce is made by basically making an oyster soup or an oyster broth, reducing it all the way down, adding some other things to balance out that flavor profile, and that's what it becomes. Some people call this amicably the boat lady oyster sauce. This is premium oyster sauce. This is where it all started. Other brands make different versions as well. You'll find maybe something that is slightly more from a smaller company. You'll end up with something that is a little bit lighter in color. But honestly, oyster sauce is one of those things. Imagine asking to get chicken soup from different restaurants. Everyone is going to taste a little bit different because that's what it is. It depends on the quality of the oysters, where the oysters come from, and the process. So the salinity in particular is different between brands. Entry level, first time using oyster sauce, this is where you should start to get a good sense of what oyster sauce actually is. For vegetarians, vegans out there is a vegetarian version of oyster sauce that I also think I would recommend. Vegetarian oyster sauce is made from mushrooms instead. It does also have that umami flavor. It's close, but they have to add other ingredients in there to approximate the oyster flavor, so it is not exactly the same. If you are vegetarian, I would suggest using vegetarian oyster sauce when oyster sauce is called for. So now we're talking about bean pastes. Confusing because they're called different things. Just in terms of categories, I think the main three that you'll see in many Chinese recipes are the soybean paste, fava bean paste, or sometimes called spicy broad bean paste, and last is sweet flour paste, sometimes translated as sweet bean paste. So first and foremost is soybean paste or soybean sauce. This is the Chinese correlate to miso and doenjang. So Japanese miso, Korean doenjang. This is made by fermenting soybeans, and in some ways is maybe one of the most original ways to get umami flavor. Hundreds of years of history. Now, a lot of the soybean paste that you'll buy is either in a blended or semi-blended form like this, where you can see that there are still some soybeans inside, or there's something that are much more consistent in texture. But basically, a lot of these soybean pastes are made from different levels of blendedness. Know that if a recipe, especially a braised recipe or something, asks for a soybean paste, doesn't specify, you're looking for either blended or sort of blended soybean paste. Now, second, spicy broad bean paste. A lot of people these days are in love with Sichuan cooking, that mala flavor, those big, red, bright, shimmery dishes. A lot of us assume that all that red actually comes from chili oil. But chili oil is really quite spicy, and chili oil isn't really the only base for the flavor in red, bright Sichuanese cooking. This is douban jiang. Douban is fava bean, sometimes known as a broad bean. Fermented broad bean paste will give you a bright red color with a little bit of oil over the top, and this is critical to a lot of Chinese cooking. So the third bean paste is most commonly translated as sweet bean paste. It is dark brown, almost black sort of bean paste. This is used oftentimes for very northern style cooking. It will look and feel similar to hoisin sauce if you season this with a little bit of sugar. Very specialized use for very specific dishes, but know that that's what it looks like, and it's almost always sold in boxes like this. So, chili, everyone's favorite topic. Chili oil, chili crisp. Chili sauce, what's the difference? Now, chili oil and chili crisp mostly are the same. The byproduct of making chili oil is chili crisp, so depending on the ratio of the filling to the oil, some people might sell it as a chili crisp instead of a chili oil. So the most common ones are going to look like this. This is maybe the most well-known chili crisp, but if you see some oil inside, but most of it is crisp. This is a lot of texture. This is a lot of what people get to know as the easiest flavor booster when they're studying abroad in Beijing or something like, oh, food doesn't taste as good as I want to. They just add a big spoonful of this. Chili sauce is something that is much more similar to what we know as oftentimes sriracha, right? The difference is that chili crisp is made with oil, chili sauce is mostly liquid made from water. So it's not always water added, but oftentimes it's a lacto fermentation that extracts water from the chili peppers itself. So when these chili peppers fresh are fermented, water comes out and it becomes a wet product that they either blend to make smooth into something like a sriracha, or they don't blend it at all and it will become something like this. Obviously, these two types of sauces are not exactly the same. If you're going to build a pantry, I would include both a chili sauce and a chili oil or chili crisp. Two main types of cooking wine in Chinese cooking. First is Shaoxing wine, the second is rice wine. This Shaoxing wine is a yellow wine. So it's an amber wine made from glutinous rice. It is actually commonly a drinking wine. When it's sold for cooking purposes, the wine itself is slightly lower grade and there's salt added to it. You add salt to avoid the alcohol tax, but also so you can carry it in the grocery store that doesn't have a liquor license. If you have access to Chinese proper cooking wine that isn't salted, all the better, because you'll be able to taste it. And just like we cook with red wine that we drink, it's good to be able to cook from yellow, amber Chinese wine that you can drink as well. In a grocery store, it'll look like something like this, so know when you're adding this, you're actually adding a little bit of salt to your cooking too. Shaoxing wine is the go-to wine now because it's fragrant, it's quite floral, and it's a little bit sweet. It's aged for different amounts of time. If it's aged for a very long time, it's called huadiao, and huadiao is actually just Shaoxing that's aged longer. Huadiao means refers to the etchings on the side of the porcelain pot that the wine is aged and sold in. So this is just specifically supposed to be a higher grade, longer age version of Shaoxing cooking wine. But to be honest, if you see huadiao in a grocery store, you're still buying salted wine. I think the lower grade stuff, honestly, oftentimes is just as good. If recipes ask for Chinese cooking wine and it doesn't specify what type, this is what you're looking for, Shaoxing. Now, Shaoxing gets a lot of interest from people, but I actually oftentimes direct people towards a second type of cooking wine that's favored most commonly in Taiwan called mijiu. So this mijiu, as you can see, is totally clear. It's alcoholic and also there's salt added for the same purpose, but complexity in flavor profile is not something you always want. Say you're making a stir fry, you want to add a little bit of cooking wine to deglaze it. If you add Shaoxing cooking wine, you're going to get this like caramel, almost floral flavor. That's cool and all for a lot of braisins and things, but maybe for an easy, simple stir fry, that's a little bit too much. I actually like to use something that's a little bit more basic and a little less intense, and that's when a cooking wine like mijiu comes into order. If you were to build a pantry, you had to pick one. It most commonly will be Shaoxing wine because of most of what we're cooking here in the US, but mijiu is a good second option to have. Now we're going to talk about oil quickly. Most of the recipes will ask for neutral cooking oil, so we're talking about something like canola or sunflower. Now onto the flavorful oils, two that we need to keep in mind. The first is sesame oil, the second is Sichuan peppercorn oil. Sesame oil, instrumental, really important in cooking. You'll find different types of sesame oil from Japan, from China, from Taiwan, from Korea, all sorts of places. Everyone does them a little bit differently, but the main thing to look for is toastedness. The darker the liquid, the more of that toast malt flavor you're going to get. Sesame oil, there's no real substitute for that nuttiness. So I always have one on hand. Now, when we're using sesame oil, because it is so flavorful and aromatic, I don't usually like to add sesame oil in the beginning of cooking. I certainly don't sear steaks or cook anything in that sesame oil itself. Just finish with it, because if you cook it for a long time, the aroma will be gone. The first oil to stock in your pantry that is not for cooking, sesame oil. Get a nice toasted version, taste it, make sure it doesn't taste burnt and you like it. Keep that one on hand. Similarly is Sichuan peppercorn oil that is now more popular because of Sichuan style cooking and that mala profile. What Sichuan peppercorn oil does is that it numbs your mouth. Usually will come in two variations. One is Sichuan peppercorn, the other one is tengjiao, which technically is the green Sichuan peppercorn, but really what it is that it's fresh. So the flavor is a little bit different, but if you need to pick one, you're going to pick for the red Sichuan peppercorn oil. Sometimes they're translated all sorts of things. Here, for example, they're called Chinese red pepper oil. Here it's called prickly oil. I can go in forever about this mistranslation. Some of it has to do with importing it into the US and regulations over here, but some of it has to do with Chinese regulation. China is one of the places that is very strict about using place names for products, almost like wine, like DOC, AOC. They're not just doing this to mess with you. This is not made from red capsicum or red bell peppers, even though it says red pepper. You just have to know what you're looking for. Chinese sugars, sometimes confusing. What we all know as granulated white sugar, hot take, granulated white sugar will work for almost most applications in Chinese cooking. When we're asking for sugar, if it says sugar, it doesn't specify what type, just use regular granulated processed white sugar. It gets more interesting when we start talking about braises and specific flavor profiles. I am again massively underrepresenting and simplifying the process, but the way sugar is made is that a sweet liquid, often out of cane, is extracted and then it's boiled and reduced. At different points, you can take it out and you can let it set and you can let it crystallize and then you can further process it and it becomes different types of sugar. The more you refine it, the more you take away some of that original cane flavor, but also the easier and more versatile it is to use because it's nice small granules that you can scoop and measure and so on and so forth. Now, as the sugar making process continues, you also slowly remove some of that caramel molasses, which causes sugars to be brown. The correlate to brown sugar, very popular now because of boba shops, is what I often refer to as black sugar, but is actually sold oftentimes as red sugar. So black sugar, heitang black sugar, will look a little bit like this. And the easiest way to describe this is as a slightly less refined white sugar. It is malty, it is molassesy, and it's going to give you a pretty unique flavor profile. This is really important. This is the really delicious black syrup that they drip on the side of boba tea these days. Really popular in Japan, in Okinawa, Southern Island, and therefore also Taiwanese cooking. So black sugar I really like as a deep flavor profile. I use it for a lot of stuff. Sometimes it will be sold as red sugar, hongtang, or in English brown sugar. But what you're looking for is a deep dark color. The darker the better. Now into the lump sugar territory, the most traditional will be something like this. We call it bingtong, which literally translates to yellow ice sugar. This is rock sugar. Rock sugar in a bag looks like this. All three of these things are the same thing, cracked to different sizes for usability. Rock sugar, because of its size, is harder to, it doesn't dissolve as quickly as white sugar. However, this is the traditional type of sugar that's being used for a lot of our braises, where we can throw something in there and let it slowly melt. What I don't like about rock sugar is that because of its irregular size, it's really hard to measure for people who don't really know what they're doing. What I like about it is that this is less sweet than white sugar. So you can actually give these little things to kids and have them suck on them. And they're really delightful and not too sweet. So you can add more of it without you making your food too sweet, but they are a little bit difficult to manage because of the shape. And the last sugar that I actually really like to use is what's sometimes called lump sugar or slab sugar, or in Chinese we call it pintong. So pintong is these slices, like slabs, these slabs of candy. Sometimes they'll look like there are different layers, but basically what's happened is this sugar has been allowed to set and crystallize after it comes off of, after that sugar has been reduced. This is the molassesy dark brown version. This is the white version. I like this sugar a lot because it has similar properties to rock sugar in that it is not as sweet as refined white sugar. However, it's a little bit easier to use because it's easier to measure. You can cut them into little cubes, and even if you are really going for it, this is similar to jaggery. So you can use a microplane or use a grater to get smaller fine dust out of this. In some of the recipes, I refer to this as jaggery, knowing that jaggery is made differently in different places, but this is the most similar Chinese correlate. That was, as quick as I could pull it together, a little guide to navigating the sauce aisle in an Asian or Chinese grocery store. If you want to see how some of these ingredients come together, literally watch any of the recipes. Or the chilled eggplant salad is a very good starting point to understand the relationship between things like our seasoning oils, light soy sauce, vinegar, sugar, so on and so forth. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what type of condiments you prefer in the comments below.